Welcome into Decent Christian Music Talk. I'm Eric McClanahan. Joining me for this series as my co-host is Kylan Savage,
Hey,
who
hey.
also co-hosts Church Jams Now podcast. How you doing, Kylan?
I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it. Unlike so many casualties we've seen in this tournament.
Very true. Also joining me is the editor-in-chief of the Babylon Bee, Kyle Mann. Thank you, Kyle, for joining us. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. This is a real honor. I've been on different shows and programs, and is there anything more fun than talking about a little decent Christian music, a little decent Christian talk?
A little decent
we,
Christian
you
music
know,
talk.
we do enjoy doing that around here.
Yeah.
So last year, I don't know how you found the CCM tournament, but I think you uh, found it and ended up talking about it on the Babylon B podcast, which brought a lot of attention to it. So I wanted to thank you for doing that. Do you recall how you like came across the tournament?
That must have been around the time like the algorithm was starting to kick in over at Twitter, where they were starting to push different people into your feeds, and I think I saw your posts about it. I don't know if I was following you at the time or I ended up following you after watching it for a while or whatever. But yeah, I saw it come through, and so it must have figured. I'm sure Google and Twitter, they all have, they know everything about you, and they're like, this guy bought a Five Iron Frenzy album when he was 10. He wants to
You
see
mu-
this
you,
in his
you
Twitter
must
feed.
like this. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I remember when I very early on when I was using Twitter and I didn't like interact with anybody. I was following you then. You had maybe like 1,500 followers at the time, and then at some point I unfollowed everybody and just started over. And next time you came across my feed was when you mentioned about the tournament, and I clicked on your profile. I was like, oh yeah, I remember him. And you have like over 100,000 followers now. I'm like, wow,
It's not
things
not
have
very well
changed.
deserved. I don't know why everybody follows me. I post dumb stuff about board games and baseball, and people follow me for the spicy political takes and spicy, church takes, and I'm just like, I keep all that stuff on the B. I mostly tweet about dumb stuff no one cares about, but
I like it when you talk about the
Yeah.
metal stuff you're into too, Megadeth and stuff like
yeah,
that. And
yeah, we can talk
uh,
about that a little bit. That's my son is playing. My son's playing in a heavy metal band now, so I'm always listening to that stuff, and that's good stuff too.
nice. Can you, I guess, give me a your, I guess, your history with music in general and specifically Christian music?
Yeah, well, as every interesting testimony starts out with, I grew up in a Christian home, and I remember, I think the earliest thing I remember about Christian music was like my parents listening to like no, not DC, Michael W. Smith's like Heart of Gold. That was an album, right? Um,
Um,
or maybe that
okay.
was a song on the album, but it was like uh a CD, and I remember it was like blue or something. And I remember that just being the constant soundtrack in our car growing up. And then we had Michael W. Smith, we had Stephen Curtis Chapman, we had Amy Grant. So this would have been like early 90s, and that was just like we were pretty much I never listened to secular music probably until like college even, it was
Mm.
all Christian music all the way through, and so that's kind of how I grew up and got introduced to Christian music. And then I can talk a little bit more about the stuff I got into later, but yeah, it was all that. And I never I didn't I know Christian music is seen as kind of this ghetto, or it's like it's a secondary market sort of thing, and it's lower tier. A lot of times people feel like that about Christian music, but I never felt that way. And maybe that's because I was in a bubble. But I was like, I listen to, and still today, I listen to Fire and Frenzy, and now I've listened to other ska now and realized, oh, they were iterating on something that like Mighty Mighty Boss Tones had done, or like there were these other ska bands that they were emulating. But I still listen to both, and I'm like, honestly, I think the Five Iron stuff's like better. So I think there are certain, I mean, obviously there are some Christian artists too that are just kind of a lazy copy or whatever of something that the secular world did better 10 years before. But at the same time, like I think there were some people that were like genuinely innovating to the space. Like I never felt the need to rebel and and go off and listen to all these secular bands or whatever when I was growing up.
It's funny that you talk about rebelling. For you would have been listening to secular music, because for me, I was raised that Southern gospel and hymns were the only acceptable music. So my form of rebellion was listening to For Him and DC Talk.
A little
You're
plus
such a
one,
rebel,
that's-
Eric. Listening
Yeah,
to
you know.
DC Talk.
Well,
Music
that was
with
like that was
drums.
my big. I wasn't even like rebellion, but like listening to MXPX, in like high school, that was or junior high school, that was like really pushing the boundaries, of what
Right.
was acceptable.
Yeah. And am I right that Switchfoot's your favorite Christian band? Would you say that?
Yeah, I would say that.
Nothing is
I-
Sound is your favorite
Yeah.
Switchfoot album, right?
Mhm.
Oh, that's interesting.
That is
I-
interesting.
A
I
very
love that.
underrated album. I think people like Beautiful Let Down, obviously, because that was the big hit, obviously.
Right.
But I think Nothing Is Out as a follow-up was even better, a more mature album. It's almost a concept album all the way through, and Nothing Is Out. It's a great album, and people don't have it.
1,000% agree.
Did-
We covered both the Beautiful Letdown and Nothing Is Sound on Church Jams Now, and Nothing Is Sound definitely came out on top, I think, of both of those episodes.
Yeah, I mean, Beautiful
need-
Letdown's a great album. Don't get me wrong. It's just, I don't know. Maybe it's played out or something, but you go to Nothing Is Sound, and it's a more mature sound, I think.
For sure.
I need to revisit that one soon, because it came out right when I was getting into metalcore and stuff. So like, I was listening to a lot of Norma Jean, and Switchfoot just wasn't doing it for me at the time.
Doesn't cut
But
it. Yeah.
no, but I do like it. I've listened to it, many times. It's just been a while, so I need to revisit that one. All right, I guess we'll talk about the tournament as is happening. Sweet 16 round just ended. Switchfoot's still in there.
Yes.
I'll just go through each matchup. Y'all can tell me if anything's surprising.
Eric, but
Yeah.
before we go through each current matchup, I would love to ask Kyle, what has been your biggest heartbreak so far? Like, what was a band you were really rooting for in any of the previous rounds that you're so bummed has not made it to this point?
Yeah, looking through here,
Or is everything going exactly
I-
as expected?
I think there's not a ton of upsets of what you would expect.
Right.
And a lot of it depends on the audience, because if if this went out to every single, grandma who listens to Air One, then some of these wouldn't have happened the way they happened. But like Switchfoot beat Relient K, that's a tough matchup.
Mhm.
I'm surprised Lifehouse lost so early. I think they're pretty underrated.
Yeah,
I-
they lost pretty handily too, right?
Yeah, I think so. I love their first album. I don't think they're as like accepted by everybody as a
Mm.
CCM band. It's kind of where I think
Right.
maybe they don't
I
have
thought
some fans.
Sixpence beating MXPX was
That's a surprise
Oh, yeah.
to me.
pretty
Yeah.
surprising.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that one up. Sixpence, yeah, because Sixpence to me is one of those similar to what you were saying. It's like to Lifehouse. Like Sixpence is one that did they have a very long career and catalog, and maybe they've done a ton of stuff that I don't know about.
They haven't put out an album in a long time. I think they're working on a new one, but
Okay.
after Kiss Me, I think they put out Divine Discontent, which got a little bit of mainstream radio play, and then they put out another album, but I think they had pretty much drifted from the mainstream's
not that
focus
I'm
at the time.
not that I'm necessarily a massive fan, but Lauren Daigle going down so early. I mean, that's
Yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty
big
surprising.
too.
She's like ranked as one of the top like 1,000 artists being listened to on Spotify.
yeah. She's even
Right
got some
now.
crossover success and stuff, and she just went down to Sanctus Real. That's like that kind of tells you something about the audience that's
Right.
voting in these things.
Sanctus
Uh,
Real.
I feel like Sanctus Real pushed really hard, right? Like
Oh,
after
were
not being
they?
involved last year, I think
Uh,
they like really campaigned this year.
I kind of get it, but we gotta pour one out. We gotta pour a 40 ounce of grape juice out for Carmen. Um,
I know.
my boy
Poor
Carmen. Where's my
Carmen.
Carmen? I got my Carmen album right here.
Oh, nice.
This is my know how much you can see that. This is our framed Carmen album.
Love it.
Nice.
Love it.
He's fascinating to me. I actually I didn't really grow up listening to Carmen. I was more like DC Talk, definitely, Newsboys, Audio Adrenaline, and Carmen was always kind of on the periphery for me. Like I kind of knew about him, but so experiencing Carmen later in life through the Babylon Bee and doing satire and like reading up on all this old stuff from Christian culture in the 80s and 90s is crazy. Like this guy was huge, and you go back and watch his videos, and you're like, these things were insane, and like people, like he was massive, and one of the
Yeah.
questions we ask everybody on our podcast is, have you ever met Carmen? And it's kind of a stupid question. We asked Elon Musk, have you ever met Carmen? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Um, and but it's so crazy when you talk to people, and we've like lots of people that are like, oh yeah, I met him, or yeah, that was my first concert, or like he had such a huge impact on things. And but I get Amy Grant. I get Amy Grant beating. I'm a huge Striper fan, so Rich Mullins, I get that one too. But Rich Mullins beating Striper is kind of sad.
Yeah.
So last year, MXPX was in the final four. So them getting beat second
Yeah,
round was really
big upset.
surprising to me.
That was wild.
So you hung out with Jordan Peterson last week. Did you ask him about Carmen?
No, we changed up our format a little for that one, so we didn't end up asking him if he'd ever met Carmen, but we did get to ask some crazy questions.
All right, we'll go. I guess matchup by matchup. Amy Grant beat Keith Green 58-42, which I actually kind of thought Amy Grant would have won a little more handily than that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's been surprising this year as opposed to last year. Like the ones that I thought would like blow their competition out of the water haven't. Like they've been a lot closer than I ever
Yeah.
anticipated.
Well, even looking to the early round, going back to the early rounds, MXPX only beat Delirious by 1 point, like 51-49.
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
How was that?
That's wild.
Yeah, that's surprising.
I'm surprised Keith.
Um,
I guess I didn't necessarily expect David Grant to beat Keith Green either, but I mean Keith Green to me is like the godfather of Christian music, but I guess there's not as much familiarity probably these days.
Mm.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably true. Rich Mullins beat Petra 71-29. Rich Mullins, who we got trending on Twitter last year during this, if he may need that again to beat Amy Grant in the next round.
Yeah, we'll see.
Who do you see winning that one, Kyle? Amy Grant and Rich Mullins.
Yeah, you got a bunch of hipsters voting in this thing, and they might go Rich Mullins, but I mean, I just think straight popularity, Amy Grant would beat Rich Mullins. I don't know. He crushed Petra, but Petra's fairly obscure though. You don't meet too many people outside of Christian circles that know who Petra is.
That's true. What do you think, Kylan? Sorry.
I don't know, man. I can see Amy Grant taking it. But I think I don't know. I can see her beating out Rich Mullins and then everyone being bummed out in the next matchup.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Amy Grant will win it this time. We'll see. Then in the 90s region, Jars of Clay beat Sixpence 77-23. That's not too surprising that Jars won, but that's a pretty big margin.
Well, especially
of
considering Sixpence beat out MXPX, and then to like lose so handily, it's like, dang.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to think MXPX would have put up a bigger fight against Jars of Clay.
Yeah,
that's
true.
Yeah.
So one thing, Kyle, that I've thought is that where 5 Iron Frenzy were in the doing so well in the tournament last year that those fans maybe brought along a lot of MXPX fans, and MXPX did really well because there's a lot of overlap in those fan bases.
That's true.
So maybe I Five Iron Frenzy's not in it this year because I said that the winner would have to sit out a year.
Yeah.
So they'll be back next year. Yeah. Just to try and keep from it being the same thing every year.
Yeah, see that. I was gonna ask how you're gonna, because it's always gonna be DC Talk against Five Iron or something in the finals.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to keep it fresh, if we're going to keep doing it every year. So then DC Talk, Stephen Curtis Chapman. Stephen Curtis retweeted it, the poll a few times, I think, but DC Talk still came out on top, which is hard to beat DC Talk.
Do you see a final matchup of DC Talk versus TobyMac? I know we've talked about this almost every episode.
I really did not think it would happen, but it's
looking a lot more likely.
Yeah. Switchfoot.
Switchfoot probably beats TobyMac. I don't know. I mean, I don't know a ton of people that listen to TobyMac. Like, that's there's radio hits and stuff, but is there anybody that's a massive TobyMac fan? I'm not really.
Apparently everyone that's got him to this point, which I didn't expect.
But his matchups weren't that. Lecrae, maybe. He's a little polarizing sometimes. I don't like TobyMac. Who did he beat in the first round there? Is that Sleeping at Last?
Sleeping at Last, yeah.
For King and Country. See, I think he's had a fairly easy ride.
Yeah, he's had an easy run up to where he's at.
That region's pretty weak overall, which is actually why I put TobyMac in that region, because a lot of the newer artists, there seems like in the CCM Twitter world, there's not a whole lot of fans of like the modern worship bands and things like that.
I think TobyMac wins this round. No, I don't want to get ahead of you, but
no, you're good. So let's see. DC Talk, Stephen Curtis Chapman. DC Talk, Jars of Clay. That will be an interesting one. What do you think will happen there, Kyle?
Like, the obvious choice is DC Talk wins, but Jars of Clay has beaten out Michael W. Smith, or is that right? Or is that? I'm gonna see if I'm looking at it right.
They beat Michael W. Smith
and Newsboys
and the Newsboys, and then crushed Sixpence.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been kind of a juggernaut this year.
I don't know. I think DC Talk wins unless you get a lot of hipsters that are too cool for DC Talk and they're voting Jars of Clay. I mean, I'm not arguing talent or anything. Jars of Clay was great, but in terms of popularity, you gotta think DC Talk's going to take that one. Yeah, I mean, I love rap music. I always have, and I always will.
Kylan, what do you think's going to happen there?
I don't know, man. I can see Jars of Clay taking it based on, I think, solely after doing the Church Jams Now episode on the Jars of Clay self-titled and how much hate we got, even though we basically gave it the same treatment that we did Jesus Freak, people were way more upset with us for Jars of Clay. So it seems like it might be something about like when their last album came out, like maybe there's a little more familiarity or a little more love and nostalgia.
Wait, did you dunk on Jars of Clay's album on your show?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
yeah. It
I'm
was
offended.
Not our finest one. Yeah, so was everyone else.
What song? What was on that was the self-titled? What was on the self-titled? Did that have Flood and stuff? Or
yeah.
Flood, Sinking Liquid,
and a bunch of other boring
Love Song
stuff.
First Savior. Kylan, you're going to get in trouble again.
I know I am. I'm sorry.
I did re-listen to that album like a few months ago, and I got to say, it was maybe I shouldn't upset the audience. I don't know. Obviously for the time, you're like, wow, this is great, and then going back and listening, you're like, it was like slower than I remember or something, just not as much interesting going on as I remember.
Mm-hmm.
But
Oh, we're
If I
both
heard
gonna get in
it,
trouble now.
yeah, I know. I'm just trying.
I'm going to get in trouble too. If I heard it for the first time today, I can't guarantee that I would love it. The drum machine thing, I'm not a big, fan
Yeah.
of these days. But Much Afraid, I will defend to the death. It
Yeah, it's a
is,
good album.
yeah. Um,
I don't know. I could see him. I could see him squeaking out a victory against DC Talk.
I mean,
Based solely on what I know of the like CCM Twitter community, I think they've got the upper hand.
I think they may have more hardcore fans than DC Talk.
Mm-hmm.
DC Talk may have more fans in general, but I think Trails of Clay may have more like devotees.
Yeah.
This is the matchup of the two bands who have a song that sounds just like Smells Like Teen Spirit.
I would actually my daughter is 12 and I test her with CCM classics to see, if they would still hit
I
with the
love
middle
that.
school kids today. And I played Jesus Freak for her for the first time and she loved it. I didn't ask her
nice.
what she thought or anything. She says, "Daddy, we put this on my iPod." So I guess, it's still got it for
All
at
right.
least
All
the
right.
youth group
That's
crowd.
interesting.
Yeah. We'll slide over again and talk about TobyMac, beat Lecrae, 58-42. NF.
I mean, if he beat Lecrae, he's gonna beat NF.
Yeah.
I think
think
NF
so.
got as far as he did last year because I think I said on one of the episodes, the beginning of his like press cycle for his new album, like had coincided with the tournament, and I think that gave him a lot of steam. But I don't know if it's there this year.
How do you even know NF?
I'm completely unfamiliar and I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
I
And I'm
was too.
surprised
I was
that
too,
this
so.
NF character beat Need to Breathe because I know a lot of people who love Need to Breathe.
So NF has 17 million monthly listeners on Spotify.
Wow.
He's got a song with over 1 billion plays that was a mainstream hit, and
Okay.
apparently he's huge with like YouTube music reactors, who react to videos and things like that. They call it a journey and they go through all of his videos, and he has a lot of really like hardcore fans, and then just a lot of at least passive fans who know his songs from the radio and things. But he started out in the Christian music industry and won some Dove Awards and things like that. It seems that now he may be starting to try and separate himself from that a little bit. I don't think his newest album
Okay. So
was released to the Christian
he's got
market.
some of the mainstream appeal there. But
Yeah.
he's kind of just squeaked by. Like look at all these matchups. 54-46 Disciple, 53-47 Chris Tomlin, 52-48. He's barely winning all these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
He
it's
did real well
surprising.
last.
And he didn't write Extreme Days, so
That's a good point.
That's true.
Because we are living in extreme days.
NF has some fan accounts on Twitter that will retweet it, and if the
that
right
helps.
ones get a hold of it, it can make a difference in things. That's actually exactly how he beat Need to Breathe, because Need to Breathe were in it the whole time, and then towards the end, some fan accounts started retweeting it and things. So that's just what happens in a Twitter contest, I suppose.
Right. Yeah.
So you guys think TobyMac's gonna beat NF?
I think so.
I would think so, but he's beat guys that I wouldn't have guessed before. So
True. All right. Underoath got beat by P.O.D. 70-30. I thought that would have been a closer matchup. What about you, Kyle?
Yeah, P.O.D.'s been crushing it. Look at those numbers. Pillar, Casting Crowns. That's no easy matchup. Underoath. I think Switchfoot beats P.O.D. here though.
Yeah, I think they got it.
I agree. I kind of thought there would have been a closer matchup between them and Relient K, but
yeah,
Switchfoot made the finals last year, so I expect that'll probably happen again.
The matchup of the San Diego boys right here, the Southtown kids.
Yep.
North County versus South County is what that is. Look at that.
So Kyle, I know that you like, some of the mainstream metal and stuff. Are you into the Christian metal like Living Sacrifice, Underoath, any of that
I
kind of thing?
I don't really like a lot of the, yelling, down-tuned, more, death metal, hardcore,
Okay.
modern metal sound. And there's not a ton of Christian metal that fits what I like, which is kind of the traditional Iron Maiden sound, Judas
Right.
Priest, even Megadeth, Metallica. I found a couple, like there's some Theocracy albums that are
Mhm.
good in that vein.
Yeah.
Striper's new stuff is very close to what I like.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of just traditional classic metal. Sounds like it was written in the 80s. Love that
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah, Theocracy, Stripers. Petra had a couple things that were close, but they often veered into the cheesy
Yeah.
uh, as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, not too much Christian metal.
Okay. So let's see. We see a Switchfoot TobyMac uh final on that side. And we all think Switchfoot will probably end up in the finals. Does that sound right?
I can see Switchfoot taking it this year. They got so close
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah.
And now
The
with John Foreman, we talked about before, like doing the Brandon Lake tour. I think they're just a little more active within the Christian scene and mainstream awareness. I think where they're at in their careers right now, I think I could see them pulling it out.
yeah.
Yeah, I think Switchfoot beats TobyMac here and matches up against DC Talk in the finals. And you know, hopefully they
Do
take it.
you think so? Uh what do you think, Kylan? Think that'll
Yeah,
happen?
dude. Especially, yeah, if they're up against DC Talk, I think, which I also think will happen. I think Switchfoot's gonna take it all the way.
That was my prediction at the beginning, so should be
Hell yeah.
interesting. So Kyle, I was trying to think back in the early days of Babylon B. I feel like there was some satire Chris Tomlin related. Does that sound familiar to you?
We we did something like a federal judge ordered Chris Tomlin to stop remaking classic hymns or something. Uh yeah, let me see if I can find it. It was yeah uh, yeah, maybe we didn't do that one. Maybe that was somebody else.
I
Um
feel like there was one.
oh yeah, we've done a bunch. Oh,
Okay.
a CIA operative sent back in time to stop Chris Tomlin from rewriting all the hymns. Yeah, federal judge orders Chris Tomlin to stop adding choruses to old songs.
Were
Yes.
those in the early days of Babylon B?
Yeah, that was like 2017, 2016, 2022 we did one, 2019 we did one.
Okay.
So he's still a punching bag for us.
What about Hillsong?
Yeah, we did one that was probably not super fair. We did one that was like Hillsong introduces controversial new fifth chord, which is funny, but there's probably better targets for that because they do sometimes, they're probably a little more musically interesting than some of the worship songs that you hear.
True.
They're definitely five chord, not four chord people.
Is there anybody else that y'all have written about like that's in this tournament?
Oh man. Newsboys, we did stuff on Michael W. Smith. We've done stuff on DC Talk, Third Day, Switchfoot, John Foreman, done Striper jokes.
I remember Relient K one. Can't remember
We
what
did the
what
Relient
the
K
title
breakfast
was.
cereal, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, we,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah,
think they,
that's
sh-
what it
they
was.
they shared it or something, which was fun.
Yeah.
I think Foreman shared ours too. We did something that was like, is like he's losing his touch. John Foreman only wrote 300 new songs this year, and and I think he shared it, and he was like, sad but true, or something like that, because that guy's so prolific.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I always enjoy when you all do music related stuff. I'm not a huge politics guy, but
Yeah.
I love like the stuff that pokes fun at like music and churches and things like that
Yeah, the
because
fun the
I'm in that
funniest
world.
the funnest moment. I mean, that's like, we've interacted obviously with people on the politics side, and we get to do fun stuff like interview Musk and Jordan Peterson and blah blah. But the biggest, like the funnest moment for me at Babylon Bee was when we wrote that joke about Keith and Kristen Getty, and we said something about how they couldn't find a rhyme for substitutionary atonement, and it was like within 2 hours they wrote a song responding to that, like making a rhyme with substitutionary atonement, and then
Really?
and posted it on Twitter and like tagged us, and they're like, "Your move, Babylon B, we got this,"
Ah,
and we were
that's
like, "This is
hilarious.
incredible!" Like, so that's always fun when you see some of these guys react, and we've gotten to interview Striper and Petra, and we got to interview Newsboys and Kevin Max, um,
Nice.
which was a lot of fun. So it's always cool to interact with those people and just like remember all our adolescence growing up with these guys, and they had such a huge impact on all of us, which is cool.
What do you see like a future for Christian music where it gets back to where there's a lot of uh more creative artists, that it's not just all congregational? Um
Worship
do you
collectives.
yeah, do you ever see it getting back to a place like that, or are those
I don't
days just
know.
gone?
Well, there's something about the industry that has changed too, where it was such there was something where it felt so manufactured and saccharine and stuff, like where everything was very like gate kept by the Christian
Yeah.
record labels, and there was a little bit that broke through, with things like Tooth and Nail that did something different, and push the envelope a little bit. And I think the
Mm,
way that music is distributed now is so different, where bands come up and they're putting their stuff on YouTube, and that's how you get popular, get a viral video out there, a viral TikTok or something,
right.
So there is this space, and I think Christians have probably a better worldview on art these days, on creating good things. Like I think people want to make good art and good music and put good things out into the world that aren't necessarily just the worship songs that say Jesus' name every other word, which is great, obviously, for certain contexts and for singing in church and all that. But yeah, it'd be nice. It'd be cool to see some of these young people kind of rise up and take advantage of that big gap in the market and be able to make this kind of stuff. And then you just got these old guys that are still going, and I'm not calling
Mm,
them old
yeah.
necessarily, but you look at what John Foreman does with Switchfoot, and still like being so creative in his solo work,
Mm,
and then still putting stuff out with Switchfoot. I love when you can hear the sound of somebody develop through all those decades, and you can tell that now they're making what they want to make. Not that
yeah.
they weren't always, but that there's obviously something where they're writing for a record label or they're writing for a radio sound, and now they're like, this is what I want to make, and this is what I want to create, and I don't really care if it's commercially successful, and I really like that.
Yeah. And I think I mentioned this on the last episode where Switchfoot did the remake of The Beautiful Letdown, where
Hmm.
like popular artists, 21 Pilots and Jonas Brothers and people like that, I think covered songs. And then with John Foreman now going on tour with Brandon Lake, I feel like if their next album is like good, I think there's going to be like a big Switchfoot revival of their,
Resurgence, yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
resurgence of their glory days. So I'm really interested to see what they do next, because I feel like they're in the place where they could get back into the
Well,
double
Switchfoot
platinum
2
album
has
days.
done a really good job of finding that balance of not just being a legacy act.
Yeah.
Like they're one of those few bands that now, they've been around about, you know, almost 30 years or something, So, but they don't just do hits, right? At their
Right.
shows. They're touring new albums and working on new stuff. I think that's rad.
Yeah. All right. Kyle, I just saw that the Babylon Bee has a new book coming out. Would you like to tell us about that?
Yeah, so we have this series of Babylon Bee guidebooks, and it's basically our excuse to draw stick figures. And and but I always love those, like if you ever played the Portal video games, like they have all those stick figures, and it's like, don't jump in the death trap and fall on the spikes and all these like kind
Yeah.
of corporate training stick figure things. So we have the Babylon
Right.
Bee Guide to the Apocalypse coming out, which is just like fun, how to survive every possible apocalypse, from zombies to the Trump guys taking over to the commies taking over to the rapture. We get like the Kirk Cameron graphics of how to survive the rapture. And so it was a fun, throwback to get to do like all our Christian stuff and then just silly general humor, and a little bit of light political stuff on both sides of the aisle. And it's a lot of fun. So these illustrated books are a blast, and we have a great art team here that is sitting there drawing insane things all day. So it's a ton of fun. And it's coming
Nice.
out in November, and I think it can be pre-ordered now on Amazon and all those places.
Oh, cool. Anything else coming up that you'd like to talk about or plug or anything?
We're just working on a ton of stuff. We're just having fun, and we're writing all these jokes every day, and working on video. That's the next big thing, is trying to push into video and do, like I said, we want to make good content. We want to put good art out into the world that happens to be created by Christians, and I think there's a lack of that out there right now.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time out to do this.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's a lot
You're
of fun.
welcome. Welcome on anytime you want to talk about Christian music. We'd love to have you on.
All right.
Thank you, Kylan, for joining me and for doing all the fun stuff to make everything sound and look good.
Yeah, dude.
And yeah, see y'all next time.
All right.